Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidtless Live. I am your host, Kurt Schmidt. So happy that you're here today. President and partner at Foundry. And speaking of, we are hiring. Guess what? We're hiring. Yeah, I say it every show, but we are hiring. Check out foundrymakes.com/careers if you want to know more. We're looking for some talented people. Always open to conversations. So if you know anybody too, give them a referral. Let them know. Cool place to work. Pretty cool. I think it's cool. I mean, yeah. I work there, so it's got to be. Never mind. Okay, so today we are going to be talking to one of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to talking about all things sales, Lee McKnight Jr., and he's joining me. We're going to be talking about prospecting. How has it changed from today's world to tomorrow's world to pandemic to post-pandemic? All those different things. So I just want to jump in and start chatting with Lee right away. Lee, how are you today? Thank you for joining me.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited you're here. So Lee, you're at RSW. What do you folks do there?
Yeah, so we are an outsourced new business development firm. We're based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. We work specifically with advertising agencies, marketing services firms, and PR firms to help them at that top of the funnel. But our main goal is how do we get clients closer to actually closing business? So it is true business development in that sense.
Okay. And so let's talk about business development because the last year has been a little crazy. And I know a lot of salespeople that have gone through probably all stages of emotions for the past year because it's been quite a roller coaster. And what are some of the changes you've seen over the last year in new business development? Are people just kind of sticking with the same old and just kind of grinding it out? Are they trying new things? What have you seen that's been working and what hasn't been?
Yeah. So I think it helps to start kind of when all this hit. And we think about how it changed into where we are now. I think to kind of set the stage, and these are things we know, but I think with agencies specifically. So the first thing was obviously it changed everything in terms of it was incredibly erratic for salespeople who had no idea what was going on, neither did any of us. And quickly what we found was, those folks who were predominantly focused on outside sales, at agencies where networking a lot, doing local and regional things like that, conferences, trade shows, all that's out the window now. So those folks, it was tough for them, and inside sales became everything. And that's, where agencies had to focus. And then let's fast forward to now and start there when you ask like what's changed and how are they handling it? I think first of all, what's happening, and this is, we wouldn't be a company without it, I guess.
Okay,
but,
sure.
New business always tends to come last, right?
Sure.
Clients have to come first. There's no denying that. That's a truth. But I think what's happened is, we saw a lot of what was paused in terms of projects and campaigns and just work for agencies. It has been opening back up for months now, right? And even harder hit, tourism and things like that. All good. Yeah. But what's happening is agencies are now so busy. And to your point, you talk about, hiring, all trying to find good people, which is particularly tough right now.
Yep. That
new business has absolutely taken a back burner because they've got so much of the business. Well, now it's starting to level out. I don't think it's not leveled out. We're going to keep seeing that, I think, and I can't predict the future.
Sure.
But and so we are getting more agencies talking about, okay, we got our head up now a little bit. Yep. We can breathe a little bit. We haven't been doing really any new business to speak of. And that's, what happens is there you get behind the eight ball and you start to prospect from a sense of desperation. Now, hopefully not, maybe that's a bit extreme to say desperation,
sure.
But so many agencies are going to be there, I think. And that's self-serving of me to say. I'm not saying that you better come work with RSW, but however you do it, it's going to rear its head sooner than later. So I think that's what I would start with.
Okay. So in terms of that, the networking, obviously we're seeing more and more live events and those types of things coming back, and conferences and all these different things are still heading up. But I still feel that there's a ton of value in the virtual space, especially because people are just more accustomed to it now. They're not as afraid of it, right?
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, I really hate to say there was a silver lining about any of this.
Sure.
There wasn't, and certainly I don't want to.
Yes.
But I know, just speaking to my own experience, I mean, our sales increased dramatically over the course of the last year and a half. And part of that is definitely because of the fact that we were doing all these sales calls through Zoom.
Yeah.
And I do think that will continue. And I think when we talk about some of the things that are continuing to work, definitely want to get into some of that, because I agree. And I think it also, certainly from a travel perspective, whenever we bring a new client on, we have an initial kickoff meeting, we would always go to them.
Yep.
I miss that a bit, just that personal connection. But at the same time, I don't miss the getting up at 3:30 in the morning to get all those flights and having to be, I don't miss that part of it. So yeah, I think from a new business standpoint, if agencies haven't been, effectively using those video tools, man, you got to get on that, because it's extremely helpful. I agree.
Yeah, and what I would say for us personally at Foundry, at least, and maybe a few other business people that I've spoken with over the last year, is that having that good referral network really served them well, because people were nervous, but work didn't shut down. But the nervousness seemed to halt people from doing the typical types of more in-depth research maybe they would do. And a lot of people seem to be just calling people saying, hey, do you know somebody?
Yeah.
Versus, spending so much time, research. I mean, I saw a huge decline in RFPs and RFIs and all those things in the last year. Not that we really respond to those things at our business very much.
I know you miss those.
Yeah, I don't miss those, but I am used to more of those happening.
Yeah,
and
sure.
And what I was getting instead was people inside of those organizations just reaching out saying, hey, do you do this? Just a quick message before there was any formal discussion. Whereas before it would be much more like, here's our big brief or whatever the case may be, and take a look at this, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. So I'm really glad you brought up referrals, because I think it was, well, I would say pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, what we always tell clients that come on board with us, or any agency I'm talking to, I mean, let me be very clear, referrals should always be a part of your strategy,
of course,
for sure. And having said that, the flip side of what you brought up, and especially during the pandemic, there were some firms who that kept them afloat in many ways, maybe not literally, but in some cases it did. And that's fantastic. Yeah. But, and I'm going to steal, I told him I was going to steal it. Chip Griffin, who works a lot with small agencies and does a lot of content himself, calls them zombie referrals. Those ones who, this is not the right fit for us. And it for a lot of reasons, the work, the money, and that it can go to that point where if you start relying on things like that and you're just kind of taking things as you get them, that can be problematic. Yep. And so I think that's one thing I would put in the category of not working, is making sure that now that we are, well, we're not out of it yet, right? I don't know. I'm going to keep saying that. I don't know for how long, but sincerely, we're not. And so, but you need to be thinking about, if that's still a lot of what you're doing, most of what you're doing, eventually they're not dependable. And eventually you're going to have to expand out and get into more new business activity.
Well, let's talk about the what you're doing thing, because I think that's really important, because myself, I've experienced this too, right? So you get hit from all these different sides about where to begin, how to do the process, all these different pieces to the sales cycle, right? So you've got things way on the front end, like Donald Miller, story brand, right? Where it's like, tell your story, tell your story, tell your story. Then you've got HubSpot and Salesforce and these other things saying automate. And then on the backside of that, you've also got people that are like, cold call, whatever the case may be. Yeah. So in your experience, how does somebody navigate through all that as a decision maker in an organization when you feel like you're being inundated from all these different sides, right? I mean, I remember early on, we went to a marketing agency and I said, hey, we're a professional services firm. We're looking for more leads and this and that. And they were like, oh, you need more call to actions on your website.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, but our sales cycle is 3 to 6 months to a year long. So there's no buy now for what we do. So me saying all that, I just want to put that out there and get your reaction to that, Lee.
Well, wow. Yeah. And I think that we are, it's a great
Hit
question.
You with a lot, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, it's you and I, and with all of us, and especially within this agency world, but everyone in business, right, is inundated with so much of this. To your point, do this, do this, do this, and I think certainly you're going to have different agency principals and leaders who have found success with any one of those, and would tout that right now and say, Lee, whatever you're going to say, this is what we're doing and it's working. So you can say whatever you want. But I do think, and it brings me actually something else I wanted to bring up that I won't spend. Well, I think it is worth bringing up, because one thing right now, and I see agencies, and particularly this is because of or due to the pandemic, and now that we're coming out the other side, we see in terms of two things I think are really important, that it feeds into your question, then I'll literally answer it, but is positioning and organic growth right now are the two things I think I'm hearing most about. Positioning from an agency perspective has always been a thing. I mean, that's
it's always been a challenge.
Always been a challenge, not new. But what's really different now, I think, but I think there are really two camps. So we predominantly work, just to give some background, with small to mid-size agencies. Now we work with larger agencies too. From a staff perspective, it's always interesting. I had this conversation the other day. I was talking to an agency principal several weeks ago, and he talked about staff. He's like, we're small. We got like about 150 people. And I'm like, that's not that small.
Not that small.
I wouldn't say that's small. So anyway.
As compared to Deloitte?
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So for us, from like a staff perspective, who we work with predominantly, I'd say is between 10, 15 to 75. That's a good chunk of who we work with. So what you had were those, I'll put it into two camps in terms of positioning coming out of the pandemic. You had the folks who got dinged, who got hurt. Tourism was 80% of what they did, right? Or some of those verticals that it was bad, and thankfully a lot of them have come out the other side. And so where they are right now, and I've literally had these conversations of, look, we never want that to happen again. We want to diversify more. Thankfully, we did have other areas where we were. How do we go about this now? What should we be going after? And that's, and so there's that, and I have an answer to that to start. And it's the answer to your question too, I think, is where to start. But then the other camp, which is interesting, is the pandemic was very obviously transformative in so many ways, personally, from a business standpoint, but specifically in terms of positioning an agency new business. What we're seeing now is, and this is all positive, 100% positive, is a lot of firms really putting their culture in the forefront, because they are making significant and beneficial changes, whether that is the work from home situation. And you know what, we get to rethink how we did this, and it did work. And now we want our employees to make sure they stay happy, they feel a good quality of life, or things like, diversity and just having an equitable situation across the board within these firms. So you see a lot of agencies really driving the train on that, and it's awesome. The one thing that I would point out though with positioning is a lot of firms now are letting that be the driver, even at the top of the funnel, and have that be what gets them in the door. And all I would point out is to be careful there, because at the end of the day, while you need to be touting that, you should be posting on LinkedIn, you should be talking about it, because it is admirable and it is fantastic and needs to be continued. To get in the door, literally at the top of the funnel, that's not going to help your prospect bring more foot traffic into their retail store or get more patients to use your hospital services. So what I would point out first, and answer your question though, is to really clinically think about, if you're thinking about your positioning, and a lot of agencies are right now, make yourself do this exercise. The umbrella of culture, I'll just put it under that, because all those things will go in your agency culture, which is so important. But set that aside for a second and think about it. 2 to 3, start with that elevator pitch, if you will, going back to basics, and only talk about your expertise, who you are, what you do, who you do it for, and why someone should talk to you. Do that first with you and your team. Then you can put in some of those other elements around your culture, because you would absolutely have both those things within your positioning statement and have it be very effective. But I think it needs to be both, and not just the
Sure.
culture. There's a lot of firms doing that right now, and it might work now. And the other thing is, eventually, I've seen a lot of this lately, not just in the agency world, but some of these people may not even have the best intentions, and they're kind of co-opting some of these things.
Right.
And
They're being
it seemed
opportunistic.
like, right, hey, we're doing this too, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
but are you? And so and I'm not trying to just pointing out, calling anyone out at all, but I think that positioning is so key right now, and then that organic growth piece, because agencies are getting a lot of work and it's head down. They might not be thinking about that part of it and how to continually utilize it. And in some cases, you might have tapped it out.
Yeah.
But I bet normally with a lot of this new work, especially your AEs who are doing a lot of that work, and I know it's set up differently with each agency, are they equipped? Because a lot of them are like, I don't want to sell, I don't want to upsell, I don't want to feel like I'm upselling to a client. that gauche, and I'm not doing it. But there are ways to do it because you can help them, and you probably can help them further. It's going to help your bottom line too, but there are ways. And so I think agencies, that's the second piece of it, is really need to think about, are you equipped and are your people equipped to feel comfortable in doing that? So those are two things. I kind of rambled a little bit there, I think, but I hope agencies are thinking about when it comes to new business and looking at the back half of the year and into 2022.
Well, what I hear you saying, Lee, is lead with what you do, but then follow up quickly with who you are, right? That's the differentiator, right? Maybe maybe the work you do is similar to a lot of other places, but who you are kind of is a differentiator. Or you can lead with who you are, but don't forget to follow up with what you do and who you do it for, right? I mean, those things you can't really separate those things, is what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely. And it may seem obvious to some folks watching, but I'm telling you that for a lot, it's not. And you need to think about that. But the other, when you asked that specific question to me, and I said, well, I want to take a step back. So specifically, when we're all surrounded by all these different ways that you should be doing this.
Yeah, I know.
For us, it's always been a very straightforward approach. And that is two things. It's number one, it's using every platform in concert with each other. And I think one of the things when you asked earlier in the beginning of what's working, what's not working, I'll tell you what's not working anymore, in my opinion, is only using email and LinkedIn to try to break through to your prospects. Sure. Understandably, when the pandemic hit, it's like, well, we can't meet people anymore. And they're probably not answering.
That's where a lot of people flock to, right?
Exactly. And they're not answering their phone, although that was a big mistake, I think, because as a company, we actually got more meetings through the phone during the pandemic. That is not an anachronistic tool. It still works. Now, it was a little different, but I think people even wanted to talk a little bit more, because let's face it, many of us, we're all kind of trapped inside for a while, and then still, depending on where you were. But for us, it's multiple platforms. So it's email, phone, social, where it makes sense. There's so much of that, as we said, that LinkedIn cold selling that's really all over the place right now. And I think it is not effective. And snail mail. I mean, it didn't work. It wasn't really over the last year. I won't say it didn't work, but you had to be careful. But what the point of sales is, you're trying to differentiate. You're trying to stand out. And I can tell you in my own experience, I will send a straight up, just stamped old school letter and sign it personally to agency principals. Sure. I always get feedback on it. I haven't got one of those in forever. Even a year later, I've had that happen. I've had this in my desk. Timing wasn't right then. But the other piece of it is you've always got to bring some kind of value, because what's not working right now is the lack of homework that so many salespeople aren't doing. I can't tell you how I get.
I was gonna get. I'm glad this is a great segue, Lee.
Yeah, I get 12 sales emails per day.
The amount of messages I get about saying, hey, we help SaaS companies like yours, and I'm like, I respond to those people. I'm like, just so you know, we're not a SaaS company. You could have literally spent 5 seconds to find that out, but.
Literally 5 seconds.
Thanks for the message. But I always, I'm like, I don't know if you're a bot or not, because of, more than half the time they're a bot that's just going through and doing stuff. Every once in a while, I catch a real person. They're like, oh no, I'm not a bot. And I'm like, okay, well, if you're not a bot, you should just open up my profile. It says Foundry Design Agency, not SaaS platform or company, but you get it anyways. I don't know.
I'll tell you, any salesperson that just does, like you said, and it literally could take 10, 15 seconds. It's all you need.
Yeah.
You've set yourself apart from 90% of the other.
Right.
I mean, literally, I think, because it's crazy when I get someone that really, I can tell they've done a little bit of homework. It might not be, I will always answer might not be a fit, I will always answer and say, you know what, I like your email's great. We don't need that right now. Keep in touch. But most of it is folks trying to sell lead generation services to me, which is our business. And it's crazy. I just want to, and I'll have like even direct competitors that will have me there. And I'm like, I don't know why you're doing that.
I got a message the other week that was like, could you use 80 new leads a month? And I'm like, no. What would I do with 80 new leads? Like, I wouldn't be able to.
Bless you for saying that.
Like, I wouldn't be able to do anything with 80 new leads. How about maybe sell me 8? Maybe that's even a lot.
Yes. Oh my God. This. Can we put that on a billboard? Because
right.
It's insane to me. And occasionally I get agencies who are like, we need more volume. I'm like, do you though? I mean, how would you have time? To your point, even 40. What am I going to do with? Because 50% of them are going to more are going to be junk. So I couldn't agree more that I love that volume play where they, would you like that? And I got one of those the other day too. It's like, no, I would not.
No, thank you. No, thank you. Maybe somebody else would. Please pass along my condolences. So let's talk about tooling a little bit. In your experience, obviously in sales, in the last 10 years, tooling has become so important. HubSpot, Marketo, you've got Salesforce, I could go on and on and on. What's your opinion on that for business owners and people, like you were saying, you're working with companies that are usually sub 100 employees. Should they be investing in these big tools? How should they be using them? How do you coach people around these things? Are they important? Are they a distraction? What do you find?
Wow, that's a great question. I'll do a little plug, and we did just release a report that would be helpful on tools and tech. It's on our site. It's a free download.
Yeah. But when this show's over, post it in the comments, Lee. Post a link to it in the comments.
But and that's the only time I'll do that, by the way. But where your question is so important, or the piece of it I certainly want to focus on, is that sub 100, as you said. And I think agencies have gotten, I don't know if better is the right word, but have handled, and to be fair, I think a lot of those platforms you just mentioned have also gotten better. I remember even 5 and 6, 7 years ago, you would bring up one of those platforms, agencies, we gave that a shot. My God, it's so feature rich. We don't even know how to do half the things that are in this, much less keep up with it.
I don't use half of it or 2/3 of it.
Totally. And I do think those platforms, all the ones you mentioned, I think, because I'm familiar with all of them to a certain degree, definitely, I think, heard that and were able to make it a better process in terms of onboarding and using those tools. Having said that, it's interesting because I swear there are still plenty of agencies who like, we just use Excel. That's our CRM.
Sure.
You can do that. I get eventually you can't do that.
Right. No, it doesn't scale.
No, not at all. And that's not what it's for. But at least they're doing something. But really that report I just mentioned, 5 years in a row, Excel was like a top 3 CRM. And we'd have to put in there, not a CRM, but it was the third. So we have to tell you what the results were. So I think I do think when sub 100, a lot of times there's not a new business director. And so the principals or someone there is having to be dedicated to that activity, which can be very difficult. You're all wearing a lot of hats. That is when I think it becomes a distraction.
Okay.
I don't, and nothing against those platforms, but I consistently see that they
good insight.
They can keep up with it. But a lot of them, though, that do have someone dedicated or a new business director position tends to, and that might make, no kidding, Lee, but really I think those are the ones who seem to have more success, who can dedicate more time to setting it up and to use it ongoing. But I think ultimately most of them still have trouble, keeping it consistent with some of those tools. But I think they have released some of those more simplified versions that I feel like agencies are able to dedicate more time and so it'll be interesting ongoing. But if nothing else, I think those platforms do such an amazing job with content that's truly helpful to agencies specifically.
Yep.
That it's got to help them. I know it does. It's the same way it does with us. We do a lot of content as well. I think that's the right play, which of course it is, but that's got to be helpful.
That makes sense. Let's talk about the content side of things because, as a professional services place, you are selling expertise, right? So, the content that you're putting out should be something around that expertise. It should be bringing value there. Where do you find people getting stuck? I mean, I know for us, for example, we've got people that are working with clients all the time. And so asking them to help build content and add to that is difficult. Hiring an entire staff of overhead to just build content and pull things out to the group. All those things are difficult. So, obviously I'm hearing you, Lee, talk about, putting that expertise out there, telling people what you do, but like, where have you seen people be successful in that process, adding being more successful in their business with it? Yeah.
Well, you're right. I mean, in terms of you can't, especially the sub 100, I mean, hiring a staff like that and the overhead that becomes is just not in the cards.
It's tough. Yeah.
It's very tough. It's very tough. And what we just last week, I mean, I had an agency thinking about coming on board with us, and they're like, I mean, what content wise, how much do we need? And it's like, man, you can't answer that question because how I like to answer it instead is baby steps, 100% baby steps. And the second thing is try to focus on video, especially because it's gotten us so much success. So many agencies did so well during the pandemic, and it's especially hard to keep that up now. But I think that the baby steps, meaning it may not seem like enough, but you got to go back to that. I didn't make up the adage, right? You create that one piece of content, use it minimally at least 5 different ways. Don't make it harder on yourself, because so many agencies still today, well, we posted that. Okay, yeah, you're going to post it differently.
Yep.
You can take a video and make there's so many pieces that you can do with it. So I think that with agencies that get, especially with video, even when they're doing it for clients, which is interesting, think that how much equipment are we going to have to do? And, when you look at, so when they start, maybe the quality of what they're looking at you right now, which looks amazing, but there's still, without a huge amount of outlay, you can get some good quality to start with in terms of equipment. But then in terms of content itself, where I always say to start is, if video's too much, just a consistent presence on LinkedIn goes a huge way if you're posting thought leadership related, not even articles, but even, because there's one firm I know that, man, they do such a great job of once a day, they are putting something out there related to their vertical. And it is not even a full paragraph sometimes, but it's
just a few sentences, right?
You can start there. That way you don't have to post a blog on your site. You don't have to create a video series doing what you're doing now. That's the goal. That's the ideal. And I think it's doable if you stick with it, which is easy to say. But if nothing, right? But if nothing else, just doing that on LinkedIn can have huge benefits. And then, of course, following, making sure that you're following your prospects and connecting with them when it makes sense, and not just cold selling, but just coming in with just a thank you. And I think that's where I would start. And then if you can swing one quality blog post a month or article on LinkedIn that's thought leadership driven, that would be the next step.
Okay.
And then if you can do video, even if you're only doing one a month, but if it's, again, dedicated to prospecting, always think about that. You're trying to get more business. So think about what you're doing with that video. But video could be hard. It took us, we have our series that we're on episode 76. And those first couple, we should take those down.
Yeah, you and me both.
Maybe more than the first couple.
Nobody go back and look at early episodes. I'm just put that out right now.
Gosh, it's helped. It has really helped. And just being yourself is big too, which of course, but a lot of agencies kind of try to be something else or try to be, it's like, just be yourself and, you'll get it.
Yeah. Back to what I was saying earlier about the business of selling this expertise is, people want to see you, and that's part of building that trust that, that person does know what they're talking about, versus some headline or offer on your website or things like that. It's so much more powerful.
Really is. Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I've been talking with a agency person recently, and they were talking about meetings. They want to get meetings. They want to get meetings. And they're struggling filling up their calendar with meetings. And I was saying to them, I was like, well, what are you doing? And a lot of it seemed to be cold outreach, with folks. if if you were to give advice to someone that's trying to get meetings, and they're doing cold outreach, obviously, like we talked about, number one is do your research ahead of time, maybe, right? Make it a personalized message. But the struggle that I've had is where I get messaged and it's almost like they're giving me homework, right? They're like, hey, we do this thing, go check this out. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to go check it out. You just, if you have something for me, tell me what it is. Like, don't make me click on like 5 or 6 links. So to your point with video, which I think also is very powerful, but if you just send a video to someone and say, hey, watch this video, I've always viewed it as like you're kind of giving the prospect homework, and that doesn't seem to work very well these days. Maybe it did back in the day where they couldn't find the stuff themselves. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that is an excellent point. And I'm very glad you brought that up, because what I wouldn't want is someone to take out of context, which they would if you hadn't asked that question. So it's, well, one is I love, and I have literally dedicated an episode and a blog post a couple of years earlier with the exact title, do not make your prospect do the work for you. Because they won't. Why should they? They won't do it.
No.
And your example is one. Another, I don't love them. I love the emails where they've emailed you 7 times and they send you one where nothing's underneath. Just want to see you got my email and then what you think about it. Your thoughts. My thoughts on what? You don't even know who you are, and I don't know what you're talking about.
My thoughts are, I don't want to read this. I get walls of text too, man, and I'm like, I don't have time to read this. Like, I don't. Like, and I get it. It's not. And maybe I'm more empathetic, or is maybe the word sympathetic, because I'm kind of play that role sometimes. So I'm a little bit more sympathetic when I get those messages, and I'm like, oh, you're trying so hard,
Yes,
but I don't want. I got work to do. I don't need to read a thesis on how you're going to increase leads or whatever with me.
Yeah. So, and I do agree with you. Like, just, hey, watch this video. You can't that would never be the first thing I would send out, or that you should send out.
Okay,
right?
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really is ultimately the point that you were making, and I 100% agree. I think what you've got to do is, again, it's that second piece I talked about, is always providing that value. But that takes time, and there is no way around it. But when you do stay consistent, it will pay off, and it'll pay off maybe sooner than you think. But those first emails have got to be direct to the point. And to your point, I never send any links in my first couple of emails, and I'm calling as well, and LinkedIn becomes a part of it as well, certainly. But I will be very concise and no more than a couple of paragraphs, short paragraphs, if that. And then you will take them down that funnel where and certainly, if agencies don't have these tools, you've got to be able to track and see, if nothing else, who's opening and clicking on your emails, if nothing else, including analytics on your site. But these days, there's so many tools out there to do that. There's no excuse. But when that's kind of the levels of permission, right? So if someone is opening, they're clicking, maybe you traded an email, but you're not, it's early, you're not there yet. That's when you're bringing in, whether it's links, certainly it's going to be links, but saying, hey, really appreciate it. This is something that we do to provide help to our agency clients or to agencies out there, and give them a little taste of why they should even think about clicking on it. You're going to have success when you do that. And that's why that LinkedIn strategy, I think, is so important today. That just having consistent content there, people will notice if you stay consistent, but that's just the key. But I agree with you. Yeah, out of the gate, do not make those prospects do homework. And certainly, you're not sending a ton of links that you're expecting them to click through. But I think, there's definitely that cadence of permission. And I think when you prospect with intent, which is absolutely what all our salespeople do, what I try to do, intent meaning, listen, you're not a name on a list. There's a reason we're reaching out to you.
Right.
And here's why. We truly think we can be of value, and this is the reason why. And then people can honestly say, that's interesting. All right. Or, you know what? I like it. We just don't need it right now. Thank you. Stick with me or not. You know. They'll respond to those emails. Same way kind of you mentioned, like, okay, I'll give them some credit.
Yeah.
They've done some work. Yeah.
No, and I saw you brought it up in a podcast I recently listened that you were on, where you had a client like after 7 years or something of prospecting, right? We've had the same thing where we've had people that 3 years ago we talked to, it wasn't a good fit. And 3 years later, we just stayed in contact with them because we
That's awesome.
liked them. We liked their business. We liked them as people. We thought it was a good culture fit for our organization, and we expressed it as such. And so they stuck in communication with us over time. And then all of a sudden the opportunity opened up, and it's been a great relationship ever since. So to your point, a no isn't necessarily never contact me again, right?
Absolutely. Oh, that's so huge. Yeah. No. Yeah. Unless you literally, like, we have the mantra, if you will, co-opted it from the military, but leave no prospect behind.
Yep.
Now you put them in different buckets of some, it's just ongoing awareness. You're not just hitting them constantly.
Right. You're not pitching them all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think, I mean, that one I mentioned, it's happened. Thankfully, they don't all take 7 years or I'd be in trouble. Would question my sales expertise, but really, I'll tell you, I'll tell you, the ones who want to come on right away are the ones I get a little nervous about.
Sure, yeah, sure.
Are you sure you understand everything we do?
Right.
And that we are a fit. And look, I'll take your money, but I don't want to be that guy. Thankfully, we're 16 years in as a company. I've been here for almost 14. And we want to be where we tell our clients to be. And that is, you know what? Know when to walk away. It's okay to say no.
For sure.
And sometimes it's like, maybe, especially when you're young, you can't always say no, but right. Because you need it, but in your gut, this is not going to work out.
Yeah.
And when you get to the point where you don't have to do that anymore, I mean, that's the nirvana, certainly.
For sure. And my advice to people in that early stage is that, at least if it's not the best fit, but at least try to be strategic. At least look at how can I turn this, these lemons into lemonade? How can I spin a good story from this? How can I spin something from it that will help me get the next better fit? Because in those early days, like you said, you're extra hungry, and anything looks delicious. So, it's important. Well, Lee, I want to thank you so much. I could talk to you all day because you and you seem to be cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways. I want to know more about how do I get in touch with you? How can I follow you? You put out some excellent content, and I enjoy the shows and other things that you've been on. So I definitely suggest to the audience out there that if you found any value in this, follow Lee, go and check out the work that he puts out there. It's fantastic. He does a great job. Where can we find you, Lee?
Yeah, so rswus.com is probably just the best place because we have a resources tab with a lot of reports, all of them at no cost, ebooks, but then our video series too, which is called 3 Takeaways, that comes out bi-weekly, all based around agency new business, and we have fun with it. And that's the best place to go.
Awesome. Well, Lee, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And you have to come back on when maybe later this year, and we'll see how the year has gone for a lot of folks.
I love to, Kurt. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor, and I think you do a great job with your content. So keep that up. It's hard work, but you're doing it. So
I appreciate that, Lee. All right, everyone. Guess what? If you are looking for a new job, maybe the best job you've ever had, is that what you're looking for? I mean, you should be, and there's a great place to start. You could go and check out our place. We're always looking for new people. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day. We got some more live shows next week, and that's been super fun. You can follow me on all the social medias, and if you like this, please hit the like button. It's really helpful. If you liked, if you have something to share, put a comment in there. In the description below is all of Lee's contact info. Follow him on the Twitters and the LinkedIns and the other things. But I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. It means a lot to me. I appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week.